Hi, Sagittarius. Welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your astrological weekly forecast. Really, we're looking at the week that is leading up to the full moon, which is the 18th. Normally, this would be available at the beginning of the week, but since that isn't really how it went down this past weekend, we're still going to be going over the transits that are leading up to this full moon, but we're really going to focus primarily on the full moon. And for Sagittarius, we're going to look at the areas of life that particular full moon is going to likely impact, and then some of the other bigger transits. And we will look at how the week has gone so far and maybe do a little retrospective. So welcome and welcome back. If this is not a new space for you, this is certainly a new type of format. So I'd love feedback if you are a subscriber or a viewer of my channel and really like these smaller sound bites. Then that is good feedback for me to know how to move forward. So Sag, you need some courage this week, Sag, and you've probably already encountered this on some level and a very much larger level, considering the fact that the solar eclipse happened in your first house of who you are and your identity. And I think it's been a lot of, I think that it's been an interesting year and a half to 2 years for Sag people in general. Of course, this reading is for Sag rising primarily, but then Sag moon, and then of course Sag sun. There'll be something there for all Sag people in general, right? But in terms of the areas of life, it's really dedicated here to the Sag rising person. So to have the sun here in the first house, this is where the eclipse was. We're all going through this purification process with the eclipse cycle. And for Sag people, it very much is right down to the very seed point of it all, the very beginning, the foundation of your very personality, which is, as you know, Sagittarius is the archer ruled by Jupiter, larger than life, right? No boundaries, all optimism all day, right? Endless expansion into the realm of understanding. So you are the alchemist. And unfortunately, this is where the South Node has been for the past 18 months. And so it's been a struggle for Sag people, especially Sag rising people, as their very identity is wrapped up in cultural value systems that we've certainly mastered, but are moving away from. And which means that Sag people ultimately have been drawn towards the area of who they are in their relationships. And really, if they've been working actively with that energy, or at least just awareness of themselves, they'll find that they, in their personality, as a Sag person, may be the alchemist, but it's in relationship. You have to get to practice your alchemy, be the magician. So, this is a process that's been going on now for the past 2 years for all of us with the nodal axis. But for Sag in particular, you're kind of ending a pretty significant cycle around who you are and who you are in your relationships. Now, you'll notice in this chart that all of the current energy is at the bottom of the chart, Sag. Even Mars is just coming out of your 12th house into your first house now. And the nodes are even shifting into, at least the North Node is now shifting into the bottom of your chart, and the South Node, or K2, is going to start moving into the upper portion, which is all about the individual's journey in relationship and what that means when you express these aspects of yourself in the context of relationship. So, but right now for Sag, it's all down here. It's all about what's going on for the Sag as an individual and the areas of life that have to do with the individual person coming to know themselves, which has been very difficult for Sag because you have Uranus in the 6th house, which is the house usually where you find out who you truly are, because some sort of crisis or health crisis or issue or challenge has forced us into instituting real world, everyday rearrangement and discipline of our material reality to make it into the highest version that we can be, right? I mean, the first house is all the potential of where we could be. So you, Sag, It's all, you are the alchemist at the very beginning. It's what you do with it over here in the sixth house ultimately that allows you to bring the best version of the magician forward into your relationships, to actually practice your alchemy. And with Uranus here in Taurus, and will be here for a while longer, this is just a process of shifting landscape constantly, and this trickster energy of Uranus in this area. So this already is like, when normally it's meant to be very, with Taurus, it's meant to be much more about tuning into and being present with what is, as a form of discipline or practice, or the way that you really condition or recondition yourself. And so it's just been so, like I said, shifting landscape all the time, and really very the psychological crisis element could be a lot more. So it's already difficult for Sag in so many ways. And certainly Sag people are up to the challenge. But what I did really realize is that the Sag person really does need some courage right now. Because the realms are going to get darker and deeper, and you're really getting to the very nature of who you are and the nature of the world around you, really going through some massive change and overhaul, and you're going into some dark realms, which is funny because there's nothing going on at the top of your chart or even in the 8th house right now, but there's something very significant about Venus and Pluto now in your 2nd house, and the moon and Neptune being in your 4th house, that you are challenged on so many different fronts right now, in just the very nature of who you are. But the good news is that there's not a ton going on that's impacting you in your relationships directly right now, other than the full moon that's going to happen on the 18th, and the moon will be in Gemini. Black Moon Lilith will be fully in 7th house as well, depending on when your 7th house cusp is. And so there is some very significant healing, but it's going to go very deep and be kind of confusing. And with Neptune in your 4th house, of where normally the moon would be comfortable, is completely dissipating. Like, you, as a Sag person, where you draw your power from is from the Akash itself, from the broadest and most formless space imaginable, which is the Pisces realm. And so to have Neptune there, and then the moon to make it even that much more watery and confusing, Neptune really challenges you to broaden that root system, and to find its stability energetically and in the quantum realm, as opposed to any one tradition. I think I would even go so far as to say finding your roots in unconditional love and compassion, by being fully immersed in the experience of being at one with everything, right? It's truly the Christ consciousness for the Sag person, that is the true source of power. Getting there has been challenging and confusing for a while, because of the Neptune in the 4th house really just dissipating it all for the Sag person. So in some ways it's good, because it's dissolving all of these family patterns and these old traditions, and really allowing it is a solvent, right? And it's just clearing away everything that's not allowing you to tap into the energetics or the experience of love itself at the most cosmic or transcendental. So, and it gives you an incentive to really spread out, because the incentive is to be connected to all there is. So Sagittarius finds their power from a place that seemingly, that is already a water sign naturally, but is way more broad in its foundation, and will dissolve a lot of, very much dissolve a lot of old traditional patterns that are just in the way of you connecting to source and utilizing that as your power. So when the moon came along and amplified this and made you way sensitive to how people are feeling, you're living in a very closed circuit. Maybe there is a much stronger urge in that moment for psychological closeness and emotional intimacy. And your inner life may have gotten very intense, but you're having a hard time expressing it. Again, this moon card that I pulled for Sag is very much pulling me towards this area, because this is where you find your real emotional stability, is in the fourth house. And there's not a lot to hold the emotions there. Sagittarius truly is the alchemist, because they have to be rooted in the formless and into the highest source of all that there is. So easy to do, causing friction with you really trying to figure out who you are, Sag. And wouldn't it be great if you could feel more emotionally secure, or at least stable? But part of that is learning to get stable with what is formless and what is timeless and what is quantum, and getting very deep. That's very interesting. Yeah, Sag is going very deep during this time, because that purification of the eclipse, again, first house, very much about the very nature of who you are, your own persona, all of the potential of what you could be. Identity issues are going to be brought forward to be burned away over the next couple of months. And it's going to be this full moon in Gemini in your seventh house, along with Lilith. That'll be kind of like a final reflection back to you about what ideas about and what aspects of who you are in your relationship. What have you figured out during the time with the North Node in your seventh house, right? Like, we're all getting drawn into this magician, hermetic type of mindset as a soul group, where we really need to be able to embrace and understand the Gemini energy and what it means. But for Sag in particular, it's been towards who you are in your relationships and really practicing, right? Gemini is a lot about practicing and repetition and training your neural pathways, right? So there's been a lot, you've had no choice but to head in this direction. And now you're going to see some sort of aspect about this finally that you're like, it's time to let this go. And it may be really obvious. You may have been working up to this. It may just be like a moment of culmination that you can actually find a way to release it in some way. Maybe you just come to the realization, but it'll come out because it's with Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is also in the seventh house now for Sag. So it's coming out whether you realize it or not, because Lilith demands to be heard. So, let's see. We have Venus and Pluto here that came into a conjunction, and it's the first of three. And so this is in the second house of your actual resources, your wealth, your assets, your currency, your DNA, your traditions, the physical world that you were born into, the objective reality that is the medium of the growth of your identity, right, is Capricorn. Pretty serious, right? Very dense, ruled by Saturn. And then you have Pluto, which don't give a fuck about sorry. Pluto doesn't give a fuck about Saturn, right? Even Saturn has to answer to the concept of the cycle, the time wave, right? And Saturn represents that in some ways. I don't think there's any issue with it. It just, that's an interesting point here. So, but in your second house, it's just all of these resources are, they've been on the path of destruction now for many years with Pluto being in Capricorn. It's just now that Venus, who really does represent value and meaning, and the second house is where, the value and meaning of our actual material reality, what leads to our sense of security and fertility, right, that allows us to survive, is the second house. And that's why wealth and assets and resources are a big part of this. Venus also represents those things. And in Capricorn, she is very mature about it and understands that ultimately those resources that we pull towards us are for the greater good, right? And so in the second house, and then Pluto, I mean, something went sideways for all of us on something went sideways for all of us on Saturday in some way, shape, or form. And some people it was just a heart opening. Some people had a tornado drop down, and some people had serious issues in their body. And I would say that for Sagittarius people, it probably did find its way into your physical reality, like in your resources, in your actual body. Something was put, willingly put into the path of the destruction of Pluto in order to become very aware of the underlying energy that is unimpacted by Pluto, if that makes sense, right? Pluto is about transformation, and the transformation of value is doubly so with Venus here and in the second house for Sagittarius. So now that Mercury is in this realm in Capricorn in your second house, now you start really thinking very seriously about what are my resources? Where do I come from? And, in terms of like my DNA, like what is my genetic line? What does it mean to be in physical form? Like what are my assets in life? What is my currency in life? And for the Sag person, it is the social order in and of itself, because that is what you create as the alchemist, is the social order. And so the world around you represents this very dynamic and unfolding reality, and something about it just, a very destructive of an objective worth, and the destruction of, in some way, of the meaning and value that you once had on certain things in terms of resources and assets. There was a big change in perspective, and this is the first of 3. So there will be more. And if you have strong Venus, for whatever reason, like if you have a Venus Sun or Venus, if you have, Taurus that's strong somewhere else, or Libra, like a Libra Sun or a Taurus Sun or anything like that, and you just have a strong Venus in general, this is even more so, because that's, something that's really driving your personality, is what Venus represents. But ultimately, something very distinct and very real and very much in terms of your assets, and your material reality has gone through some very destructive type of experience, and it doesn't have to necessarily be dramatic, as much as it definitely, something happened in the realm of what is valuable to you and what is yours, in terms of the material world. And so Mercury now coming into this space is going to start really thinking very seriously about this, and thinking and putting, finding that you're going to be putting a lot of your mental energy, at the very least, towards your resources, because something is not, right there, and something just kind of exploded, or something transformed itself, or there was an awareness made of something that needs to be transformed in this realm. Very palpable in your body, or in something that's very valuable to you. So, but there's a lot of maturity there as well, and she knows what's up because she's in Capricorn right now. So she's in her crone phase, so she knows what's going on. She's like, you have to give in order to receive again. That's a timeless loop of reality here, and she knows that. And so she already knows, at the same time that the destruction's happening, that there is transformation coming too. So there may have, especially Sag, you may have found yourself like really being okay with what is unfolding, because you understand the bigger picture of it, because that's what a Sag does. So, and Mars is entering your first house, so about to fight way to the center of your identity, right? And very skillful in forcing issues around this, and just have a lot of initiative to really start facing off with, and giving the initiative for this purification process to keep unfolding. Now, Mercury, yes, is in your second house, and you're going to start really thinking. And Mercury's ruling this full moon, right? It's a Gemini full moon, so Mercury rules your seventh house, Sag, and is, you really tend to. In your relationships, be the magician. Again, we talked about this. So you're going to be really thinking about your assets in relation to how they eventually will be something that you can utilize in your relationships. So the thing is that it's going to be, when we come to the full moon itself, Sag, and we come to the full moon on the 18th, right? So we come to the full moon on the 18th. Black moon Lilith is also here in your seventh house. But what we do find here is that Mercury is going to square Chiron in your fifth house. And also, too, this, look at this, Saturn and Uranus square is starting to come online. We'll talk about that later. But the big one here is the full moon with Lilith right in tow, and then also this square between Mercury and Chiron in your fifth house. So Sag, we're all dealing with this Chiron wound when it comes to the very subjective nature of ourselves, right? There's a lot of shame and guilt for just being ourselves and having the right to exist, right? This inalienable right to be is part of what having, having the spark of creation within you is, whether you're a plant or an animal, a human, whatever. It all starts here, and there's something very distinctly imposed upon us collectively that keeps pulling us away from actualizing our full potential, which is what Aries, again, represents. And this is, Mars rules your fifth house, Sag. So the fact that it's coming into your first house, and that is traditionally the first house, you really are going to start utilizing the parts of yourself as the alchemist to really find your joy and your optimism and your, which is a huge Sag trait, and really where your passion is able to express itself, which is in just being yourself and allowing the alchemy to come back around and to find the spark. I mean, Sag people find their vitality through the spark of creation, where it comes from, and I would say even understanding that. But Chiron is pulling us all away from actualizing our own potential as subjective souls having a human experience. And there are a lot of things that are imposed, and so in the natal chart you would explore with that person in their own history and their own timelines and narratives and stuff where that Chiron wound. But for all of us right now, it really is just in being ourselves and the inner child in a lot of ways. And so for you, it's definitely in the fifth house of how a child is at their full potential, which is just being themselves and expressing themselves. So I think, Sag, you just really need to enjoy your life more and find that part of yourself that's expressive and authentic and sovereign. Because boy, as the alchemist, when you have access to the spark of life. So something keeps pulling us back, and it's going to come more to the surface, I think, with this square to Mercury in your second house, because you're going to see what you're tuning into in terms of your assets and your history. Sag, what you're tuning into in terms of the frequency band of your history is impacting directly and will show very, I think, distinctly where how this is pulling you off focus from staying attended to the actualization of your highest potential, as opposed to the one based on the frequency that your mind is picking up. And so when the Mercury in Capricorn has that square with Chiron, it's going to become pretty clear through the discomfort of it. You either realize that you've been tuning in to a frequency band that is reinforcing this Chiron wound, or you become aware of it, and the discomfort of the dissonance of it is just like, oh, oh, okay, let me just change, let me just move the dial here and change, the frequency band that I'm tuned into in the world around me and in my resources. And specifically, Sag, I keep getting this. It's in like your family and your traditions and lineage, right? And it's going to take a lot of, again, it's going to take some courage to go into your own subconscious and your own history. It's really about going into your own history and your own lineage in some ways. That's going to be, and in a way emotionally, right? You're going to have to get into the inner realms in order to explore these things, but or be willing to not turn away, right? Because going into the moon phase is incredibly important when we're talking about archetypes, but it it's not for the faint of heart, right? So Sag, I mean, like to front, they have it all figured out, but it's only in your relationships you get to prove like how truly much of a magician you really are. So again, Mercury, if you change the dial to the bandwidth of to universal source, if you're in attunement to true the prime reality around you and not the one that you either were born into or the false one that's overlaying, if you change that dial, it's going to show exactly where you've been pulled out of yourself. And when Sag does this, they are going to heal something this inner child is healing is going to allow you to just be you're just gonna shine. You're just gonna shine, and which is really important because Sag people need to be front and center because they are leaders. That's, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, larger than life. He was the one in charge. He was the one that actually was able to somehow, understand the big picture, the alchemist, right? And the alchemist has access to a power that only few adepts are able to have. So you have access to it, but it's going to be about having the ability to go deeper into these spaces. Sagittarius. So, and you're going to see a lot of who you are in your relationships that really needs to go, and also what needs to be seen first and then can go as a result of there's a lot of purification of very much of who you are as a person, Sag, because it represents so much of where we've all come from. We have to go towards a new horizon, right? And Sag should be capable of doing so. It's just that when you get so entrenched in the meaning of the horizons that you've already been part of, I think it's really hard to then switch gears. So I think Jupiter, your ruler, is coming into Pisces so soon. And out of all the other signs, I haven't even talked about Jupiter in Pisces yet for this forecast, but I'm going to talk about it for Sag because this is going to be where you step into like full on you're going to just, this is where the courage and just this sense of like confidence and leadership in some ways in the realm of the fourth house, your inner life and who you really are loyal to and where you draw your power from, Sag, is about to go into boss mode. Okay. But there is, just remember that you're still working on a larger term cycle in terms of this purification of self. But when you have Jupiter come into your fourth house, the moon journey into the darkness of self, is going to, you will have all the resources you need to successfully make this journey. It's not that it won't be difficult, but you have to be aligned with the right purpose, and you're gonna see exactly what has to go first in who you are in your relationships, because there's something very distinctly there's something very distinct about who you've been that needs to be addressed, Sagittarius, and let go of in order to then start successfully going into this purification process. So, Sag, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that that is plenty of information for you to work with. If you are interested in a personal reading or any other kind of session, or if you are interested in supporting my work through Subscribestar, you can stay to the end of this video, and there'll be some information for you, as well as the link to the general weekly astrology that this covers. That will also be if you're on YouTube. If you're on BitChute, you just got to scroll down and look for it if you want to get a more in-depth look at the transits themselves. But Sagittarius, I got strong feels. I have a lot of Sag, not a Sag rising, but lots and lots of Sag. So I'm feeling like the real work is about to begin for Sag in terms of identity. So at least the South Node is leaving our first house, or not our first house, your first house, and moving into the realms of the collective karma. And where, so Sag, again, you're the alchemist. And so we need you front and center to guide and lead people and be able to identify what has gone wrong in the past in terms of the way we have created resources together. But this is going to require some really courageous self-reflection and self-evaluation, Sag, which is hard because Sag people are always right. So doing any kind of investigative work, especially because Uranus has just not made it very easy, is a challenge in general. But Jupiter in Pisces, that is going to be a game changer for Sag people in terms of it's time to step into that space and really take a really, just really expand your inner life in a way that you, with a sense of identity behind it. So I think that's going to be really awesome for Sag people. So yes, stick around till the end of the video to get some more information, or you can subscribe to the channel or even check out the description box. It's got everything that you need down there. So Sag, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. We will return to this type of forecast for our next new moon, which is on the 2nd of January, 2022. So in the meantime, take care of yourselves. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next video. Maybe. There we go, guys. Oh, thanks for letting me be a real person. All right, take care. Bye.